Gather round, tea drinkers, listen here. You ever hear of the story of the Pauper and the elk? Oh, nary a traveller should pass through the borders of Eastshade without hearing the tale. Well, there was this boy, you see, a young Pauper, who wandered Eastshade to and fro. Every day he settled himself on the cobblestone streets of Nava, the Porta Linda, anywhere he thought passerby might take pity and toss a few glowstones his way. Most folks, they caught a glimpse of his tattered rags and unkempt appearance and looked the other way. Lucky he was, surviving all those nights he did as a youngster. Many days he made do with crumbs and fish scraps scrounged from the city. When he was fortunate enough to find such shreds before sunset, he'd hike along the shore to bathe in the hot springs. Other times he travelled no further than the forest river, thankful for a clean drink and somewhere to watch the colours of the sunset dance upon the water. Now, to say this Pauper felt disparaged by his lack of glowstones would be a misleading claim indeed. He may have been alone by society standards. Folks certainly did turn up their snouts at him, but he could oft be found humming to himself, his inner life filled with imagination and more than a speck of joy. Most folk would be saddened by the lack of bread and tea, or the absence of thick quilts to warm the bones on a cold night, and yet this boy had to live through it each day. Hard to say whether it was the energy he put out into the world or the sound of his voice when the boy hummed. Whichever it was, one night an elk came to drink at the river's edge, unperturbed by the Pauper's presence. Now, when the boy spotted the elk, he could scarcely believe his eyes. Great shade! You ever experience anything like it? An elk coming to you in the quietest hours of sunset? Well, this elk, it was most unusual in more ways than one. Above its sleek body, white horns rose up and swirled together in the most magnificent way. When the elk spotted the boy, it stared at him a long moment, then bounded back into the forest, for it was a shy creature, as most of them are. I'm willing to bet few other folks even know they exist in these woods. In fact, the Pauper was the only folk to which the elk revealed itself. Imagine that! A penniless boy sighting this sacred animal ahead of all other folks, including those of higher stature. Though the elk found the Pauper strange, walking on two legs and all, every eve the boy went to the river, the elk showed itself for longer and longer periods at a time. One night, the elk was standing tall in the river, same place the boy usually stood, and the boy, with great uncertainty, slowly, very slowly, eased himself down in the water toward the elk. The elk, with those white swirled antlers, blonde fur and piercing eyes, stared evenly at the Pauper. The boy fully expected the elk to dart away as he drew near, but even when the boy extended his hand and stroked its cheek, the elk stood stiller than the great shade. Wasn't long after that, Pauper and elk became friends of sorts. It was as if the elk understood the boy's situation in the world and took pity on him. 'Twasn't long before the elk showed him the secrets of the forest, bounding ahead and communicating in some unspoken language, showing the boy which berries to forage and which would make him sick. Those rare times the boy fell ill, the elk even showed him which herbs to soothe the pain. Many a secret lies here in the forests, you see. Only some creatures and folk know how to commune with nature. I'm not saying I'm one of them. I just tell the stories of these folks. For a time, the boy abandoned his ventures into the city, preferring instead to wander round with the elk, experimenting with combining them herbs. Eventually, there came a day when the boy, now near a man, returned to town, selling his potions and salves to the people in clothes he made of the forest plants. Same folk who pretended not to see him in years before now lined up to buy these salves from him. Imagine that! What would you do in the same situation? Those folks giving you glowstones for things you made when not long ago they wouldn't even look you in the eye. Anyway, 'twasn't long before this man was one of the most respected citizens in Eastshade. Folks on faraway islands placed orders, and his wares were shipped far and wide, setting sail from the very docks where he'd eaten fish scraps as in years past. The Pauper, medicine man, lived a long, prosperous life, till just a few decades back. Shame you can't meet him now. In fact, he could have had any tombstone he wanted. Granite, diamonds, gold leaf. But he requested one of the most simple around. Just a small pattern of stars, same as the ones Nava astronomers say mysteriously appeared in the night sky a few decades back. Some have even said those stars only came into view just shortly after he opened up his shop. Coincidence? Perhaps. But I think not. If you look closely at the night sky, you can find that bunch of stars shining more brightly still than any others. Most folks speculate on the shape of them stars. Many claim they take the shape of some sort of stag, with antlers that differ far from another stag they've ever seen. Of course, for me and my kinsman, we know the truth about them stars, and of the guardian elk that looks after the most overlooked among us, all the while keeping an eye on the forest.